Welcome to Energy Thinks, a podcast about the oil and gas industry's role in the energy future. I'm Tisha Schuller, your host and the CEO of Adamantine Energy. Those of you who have been following along know that season 9 is paired with the release of my new book. It's out. I'm so excited. It's called The Myth and the Moment: From Polarization to Progress in the New Energy Future. I've been interviewing different characters in and around the book, and it's been so much fun, but I've actually really missed these solo pods, so I'm happy to come back to you with a solo episode today. I have 4 things I'm going to tell you about in this episode. I'll give you a little personal update, talk about the Abundance Conference I went to in DC a couple of weeks ago, and the unexpected gift I received at the Abundance Conference. You'll be curious to know what there's an abundance of. I have now given my first talk about the myth in the moment, and putting together a talk, trying to summarize a whole book in somewhere between 20 and 60 minutes makes you really distill down the key elements. And so I'll tell you a little bit about what I learned from that experience and what I'm learning out in the world talking about the myth in the moment. And then I want to talk a little bit about the bridge builders, those of us who are just damn determined to make the world a better place. I want to talk about us, and that includes you. So if you want to know more about our work at Adamantine, go to energythinks.com. While you're there, I hope you will subscribe to my weekly newsletter. Both of these things are true. You can also find that newsletter on Substack. Now, here is my latest solo pod. All right, everybody, it's so great to be back. I am at my desk for one day this week, which will be one day of the last several weeks because I have been a bit on a tear, a travel tear. We got the youngest off to college in the Pacific Northwest. So official empty nester now. Woo woo. Will be nice to actually spend some time closer to my nest, but I get to take the hubby on a business trip for the rest of this week. So that's kind of fun. Okay, those of you who are following closely on my fitness journey, I was very, very pleased to do a final test run that was 13 miles. It had 1,600 feet of elevation. I thought my time was a little slow, but I was a little overtrained. I was getting kind of tired. I'd been running a lot and swimming a lot, but I did it. And then when I checked the elevation against the race, which I was going to run in 2 weeks, I actually ran more elevation in my final training run. So I was feeling really good. And then I went to the Abundance Conference and I got COVID. And so not only did I miss my race, but I missed my trip out to my annual pilgrimage to Stanford for the Real Decarbonization Consortium. And it was such a bummer. And it knocked me out. I've never had COVID before. I don't know. I actually thought I was immune because I kind of think I have superpowers, of certain kinds. And that was one of them. But nope, back to mortality. So I missed my run. And then I thought, well, I'll just run it anyway. Like the next week, right? I'll just go run it. But no, I've been knocked on my bootay. And so I ran 2 miles yesterday. This is like a full 2 weeks later. And I finally got back in the pool and did a barely respectable swim this morning. So I'm back, but I did not run my race. My delightful husband did run the race, but it kicked his butt. And then he came down with COVID the next day. So even more impressive. So now fitness journey is all about swimming because I'm going to go do a swim trek in Egypt in November. So I need to be in the pool 4 days a week, which is going to be a little tricky with my travel schedule. I'm not sure how that will work, but you just do your best. You just do your best to have adventures. So that is my personal update. So let me pivot now to telling you about the Abundance Conference. So this is the second annual Abundance Conference. The first one was last year and it had, maybe 200 people. So it was at a much larger venue. It had, I don't know what the official attendance was, but let's just say well north of 500 people. And every event was packed to the gills. Like when you did a breakout session, you were just like squeezing in. And so that was pretty exciting because this is a lot of people who want to think about politics differently. I would summarize the main idea behind abundance is instead of having a policy environment that is about creating rules that create obstructions to things. It's about figuring out how to enable the supply of things, increase of supply. So enabling regulations or removing barriers. Permitting reform would be the kind of thing that would be an abundance agenda item. How do you make it easier to do things? So it was very exciting to be among so many just like politically active, smart policy people. And I've been in this center left community for a long time. I've been on the Breakthrough Institute board for, I don't know how many years, let's just say 8 years. I've been going to their conferences for years. And there were a lot of people I've never met at this event. So there's a lot of new groups, there's kind of middle center left, all the way to some center right groups in the Scannon Center, Bipartisan Policy Center, others, even farther right, the American Conservation Coalition, I think that's ACC. So really nice blend of people, a lot of generational diversity. So like lots of Gen Z and millennials, there to make things happen. So that all felt very exciting and very rewarding. One of the highlights was the dinner. Speaker was Spencer Cox, governor of Utah, now regularly on the airwaves due to the unfortunate assassination of Charlie Kirk in Utah, but gave him kind of an instantaneous national profile that maybe he didn't have before. But if you have opportunity to listen to an interview with him or hear him speak, or even better, see him in person, he's the kind of thoughtful, grounded, political persona that our country and our world needs right now. And I have a lot of respect for him. Really enjoyed hearing him speak. Almost gave him a hug when I ran into him, but I was coming in from a run, so I had the good sense not to do that. But I really liked him and was impressed by him. Also, bonus, Build Baby Built hats were being worn all over the conference. So that was pretty exciting. Okay, so some of the things that I think could use some work in this abundance movement. There was a lot of discussion and debate about the types of abundance. So Niskanen did an interesting article, like sort of trying to narrate the different types of abundance. And I'm not even going to articulate them to you because if you're on the outside of abundance looking in, it's just kind of embarrassing, like how inside baseball the debate is getting about the types of abundance and who's what, and if there's my type of abundance and your type of abundance, and who's like politically relevant and who's not politically relevant, and so on and so forth. So I'm not going to do that. But here's what I will say is if abundance is going to grow beyond a few thousand people who are interested and committed, it's going to have to figure out how to have a much broader appeal. It can't just be inside baseball for policy geeks who want more housing or permitting reform kind of thing. And so the question I was asking myself when I was there, and I may write about this, but you're going to hear my first barely baked thoughts here, is the questions I'm really asking myself are, what would be an abundance movement that the oil and gas industry could love? And that's everything from, executives who are trying to navigate the political world to oil and gas field workers, who are really interested in the economic opportunities of their job and the quality of the communities within which they live and the education of their families. And I feel like if the spectrum of oil and gas employees and supporters could support abundance, it would be more representative of what Americans could support in abundance. And we all know that when you look at polling right now, the issues are cost of living, cost of energy, inflation. Everything is pocketbook issues. So what is an abundance that the oil and gas industry could love? Okay, so I've been thinking about what would be the qualities of that. And as you're listening to this and you're like, what would be an abundance movement that I could love? I'd love to hear what you think, with the caveat that you're the hyper engaged, right? And so we also need to think about what is an abundance movement that our sisters and brothers-in-law who don't care about politics could love as well. So one, I do think there's a real hunger to get away from the polarized partisanship, even though we all snap back into that, when we're under threat. But A true abundance movement would be truly nonpartisan. And abundance still codes pretty lefty when you're there, the language, the people. So I would really like to see some transcendence of that. And the only way you could do that is if you got away from this idea of good guys and bad guys, right? Like the discomfort. While I was at the abundance movement, there were some, I guess, I'm not on Twitter or X because I value my mental sanity. But if I were, I would have known that there were some very public progressive left critiques of the abundance movement. And some of those critiques were things like they're hanging out with like center right organization and companies, and there's an oil and gas person there and so forth. And that kind of mindset that you can't hang out with, you can't break bread with, you can't try to solve the world's greatest problems with a whole suite of people particularly because they like have jobs and make money or provide services. I just have such an impatience for that kind of critique. Now, that critique came of this group, but even within this group, there's still that idea that oil and gas and coal and, whatever else are like maybe not bad, but like really, really, really uncomfortable. And we just prefer not to talk about it. So everyone still talks about clean energy like it's a nervous tick, not energy, abundance, affordable, reliable, decarbonizing, whatever. It's like clean energy. Like we have to say clean when we say energy. So we didn't accidentally tell people that we might flirt with unabated natural gas to build our data centers or something. So I would like to see some courage. I'd like to see some courage on behalf of proponents of abundance to start figuring out who some of these others are. Like any group that gets othered, like we don't like that. Like you could see the same kind of thing around developers. Like we want more housing, but we don't want developers. Like we want more energy, but we don't want natural gas. No one's really quite that explicit, but I think these uncomfortable trade-offs, these strange bedfellows, like if we want to create a new set of politics that are less polarized and more successful, we have to have some courage. And I mean, it doesn't take any courage for me. I spent my whole career talking about oil and gas and my love for it. But I think it's really hard. So I'm not saying it's easy, but I do think it's necessary if abundance is going to succeed. And then I think abundance right now is still sort of flirting on the edges of energy. But the weird thing is like, you can't talk about a functioning government with capacity, housing, housing is like cost of housing is such a political driver, but you can't talk about any of these things if you don't have abundant, affordable, reliable energy at the foundation of that work. And the abundance movement has not made peace with that because on some level, people know that means you would have to link arms with natural gas. So abundance needs to be overtly high energy and overtly some kind of all of the above, best of the above navigation. Somehow they've all made peace with nuclear. And so that I think is a gateway drug to abated natural gas. Just want to say. Okay. And then of course, the abundance movement knows that they need to be we got to build things. We need to build things in America. We need to build things, build. But people aren't really saying pipelines, right? We got to build. They might say transmission lines, but it's like, yeah, we got to build a bunch of infrastructure, and that includes pipelines, generation facilities, transmission lines, like a lot of ugly things that people don't want next to them. We got to build those things, which means we got to have conversations about how we're going to get them built and how we're going to make it acceptable to manage the trade-offs. And the way you do that is by engaging with communities and letting communities be co-creators of these projects. And there's just no element of that sort of like practical on the ground, we need to build shit perspective. I'd like to see that in there. And so inherent in that is this understanding of communities. You've got to get communities on board if you want to build stuff. And there are trade-offs. So there needs to be the upside needs to be bigger than the downside for those communities. And so all of that, I think, would make for a really interesting abundance. And now that I'm sort of saying that out loud, I think that all needs to be written down. So stay tuned. I'm going to work on an abundance that we could love. And I'll be interested in your talk. And if you hate all of this, I want to do that too. So I don't waste my time if it's just so like Like abundance, what? But I think it's still like it's new, it's nascent, it's got energy. There's a lot of people like, let's mix in. Let's like get in there and see what we can do. Okay. Third topic. I got to go to New Jersey. Thank you to the company that hosted me. You're wonderful. To give a main voyage of the Myth in the Moment talk. It's really hard to write a new talk, right? It's like you spend days and days and days to get to like speak for, in this case, I was on stage for an hour, but I only spoke for 20, 25 minutes. So the cool thing is like some things are really resonate. The idea of the myth of an easy energy transition. People in the energy industry are like, yeah, right. It's a myth. It's powerful. You know, it feels kind of like a religion. And yeah, so that really resonates. People really get that. And the fact that the myth is unraveling. Yes, yes, we see all these signs. Yes, we see, you know, we have stakeholders that want to talk about what comes after this idea of like, we're going to decommission our gas system. What comes after that? And there's a real understanding of the moment. Like we do have a unique opportunity and we should not blow it. The piece where the interaction with the crowd, with the audience gets, I think, really interesting and nuanced for me. And I still have room to grow in being pithy and compelling. Because if things are nuanced, I don't want to just answer with like cliches. I want to acknowledge how hard this work is. And so the really big question that every single person wants to know, every single person that raised their hand has some version of what should I do? And sometimes it's specific to a situation. And sometimes it's like, yeah, I don't want to miss this. There's a real shared understanding that the future is not written around what comes next in the energy system. And there's a real understanding that we have an opportunity to shape it in ways that are really good for America, North America, the world. And that requires engaging in a way that we were just so on our heels the last 10 years that this is a different kind of moment. So a few things that I think are really important from that I am walking away thinking about how to emphasize. The first is this idea, especially right now. So it's easy for company leaders like you to get sort of caught up in the politics, Trump administration of the moment, like energy dominance and kind of highly polarized, like good energy, bad energy. None of that is going to have staying power. The thing we have to offer is a vision of the future that is more compelling than everyone else's. And so, like when I had Toby on the podcast last week, he said something that has really been sticking to me. He said, the world is in a race for energy that is affordable, reliable, and net zero. And I thought, okay, that's a vision I can get behind. Like, the world's in a race and whoever provides the best energy is going to win. And if you think about that on like a 30-year time scale, all energy is going to be competing with nuclear, right? Except where you need liquids and fuels, right? You need molecules to move things or feedstock. But I think that spending some time thinking about your vision of the future that includes the contributions that you're making, I think is really important. And I think in the short term in America, for example, like we are going to meet the opportunity to grow power production. And we're going to meet it first, a bunch of unabated gas, and then we're going to abate that gas with CCS. And then over time, a lot of energy will probably transition to nuclear over time. And this energy is going to be increasingly clean and increasingly affordable. I think like these are the kind of things we need to be able to convey. So a vision is really important. The second thing I find is that every company and every group needs to be able to articulate a strategy today. Because everyone is a little like dumbfounded and lost. And you really hear this in, media interviews with executives. They're just, reporters are all over the place. They don't know if they should be asking about climate or, LNG exports or what. And so we need a compelling view. This is what the world looks like. This is our role in it. This is how we're meeting that in the short, medium, and long term. So I think articulating that public facing strategy is really important in a way that you and your employees can narrate this to your family, to your friends. This is what's happening, and this is our role in it. I think that's really important. And then the third thing that I'm surprised at how many questions I get are just straight up interpersonal. How do I deal with my kid that came home from college and thinks I'm evil? How do I address the neighbor who's really upset about cancellation of the offshore wind projects? And I'll just say, all of you listening have probably heard me say this many, many times, but there is just a real opportunity for us to understand that we are incredibly influential in this conversation about energy in the future. And the way we exercise that influence is first by listening. Tell me what the world looks like to you. Tell me about what you're concerned about. Tell me about what you want to know more about. And then, are you interested in another perspective? Are you interested in the work that I do? Are you interested in what my company does? And then there's an opportunity to convey that heartfelt pride in our industry, in our companies, in our work. But first, it's better to give the other person a chance to talk and be really keenly interested in what the world looks like to them. Then you can convey your authentic pride, not to change their mind, but just to create a kind of shared understanding. It doesn't even have to be agreement, right? The thing it's always worth remembering on these interpersonal dialogues is no one ever changed someone else's mind by trying, right? If you try to change someone's mind, you're just setting up a confrontation. What happens is shared understanding, new kinds of engagement, new kinds of conversation. And there really is nothing more compelling than a genuine pride in your work, in your company. And if you're not trying to convince someone else, they don't have to agree to be moved by it. So I think that's a real opportunity. Okay, so that brings me to my fourth and final item I want to talk about, which is bridge building. So we are at such a uniquely polarized, volatile moment. And one thing that I have been listening to, in news and speeches is this idea of them, right? Anytime there's a conversation which pits a group as the other, we know what that feels like, right? Like the oil and gas industry has been the other in the energy conversations for the last 10 years. But in these political conversations, this idea that we can no longer trust, connect with, engage with, break bread with, make policy with another. I just want to encourage everyone who listens to this podcast to, anytime you find yourself othering a group, whether it's environmental activists or whether it's conservatives, if you're liberal, if it's this or that, to challenge yourself to see the individuals and the understand and remind ourselves that every single person wakes up, except for sociopaths, thinking they're on the side of right. And so if we had guides to our engagement with other humans, the first would be give them the benefit of the doubt. They believe they are on the side of right. We don't have to agree, but we can respect that that's what they think. So benefit of the doubt, start just right out of the gate. Second is grace. We all make mistakes. We all lose our cool. We all have wrong-headed ideas that we later learn were mistakes. Giving other people the grace to be wrong, to be angry, to be defiant, to be knuckleheaded. Let's give people grace. Let's give them the benefit of the doubt. Let's give them grace. And then what if, even as passionate warriors for the oil and gas industry, what if we just did that with kindness? What if we were just so damn kind all the time? I mean, would that break anything? I just can't see any upside to culture warrioring right now. The fever pitch is unproductive. There are a lot of most people are politically unengaged, and therefore the culture wars are just a humongous turnoff. Like, what if we just didn't do that stuff? What if we made the first move? We came in with kindness. We were the bridge builders. I feel like in the moment we have to lead into the energy future, this sort of being conscientious of our bridge building status and opportunity could be really constructive, because the thing I remind myself again and again when the politics of the moment feel so negative and in many ways chilling is that the future is not written. We write it. Like, we write it. You, me, and all our other friends who want to make the world better, we write it. So let's give people the benefit of the doubt. Let's allow for grace for mistakes. And then let's just engage with kindness. And I think we can do all that and be passionate, pro energy, abundance warriors at the same time. I'm interested to hear what you think about all that. That is my solo episode for today. Thanks so much. You've been listening to Energy Thinks. I love doing these solo pods. I love the feedback you send me. So shoot me your notes. Let me know what you think, especially about this idea of an oil and gas friendly abundance. I'd be interested in what that looks like. I hope that you will rate Energy Thinks wherever you listen to your podcast. It helps others in the industry find us. For more about our work at Adamantine, go to energythinks.com. While you're there, you can find a link to buy my book, The Myth and the Moment. You can also sign up for my weekly newsletter. Both of these things are true. Also available on Substack. I'd like to thank my colleague, Kayla Chives, for making this podcast possible. Until next time, I'm Tisha Schuller, wishing you and yours happiness, prosperity, good health, and some bridge building. Thanks, everybody.